Okay, I told her, I said, somebody told me we weren't, but she said we are, so.
Okay, good. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
Political season.
Yeah, that doesn't
No
help
kidding.
with all this is happening in the presidential election.
Yeah, I'm a state too, so I'm getting a call today.
Guys, we're good.
We're on?
I'm really curious to see how this would come down if it wasn't an election year, presidential election year.
We are currently on it. Still shows waiting here. All right.
Uh-huh.
Technology is grand. I said technology is grand.
When it works.
Yeah, it works. I'm on the internet. Can you look and see if it's pulling up on yours?
No,
'Cause-
I'm running the.
Well, I mean, on your phone, it's just, you know, if I can't view it on my phone, then nobody can view it in the public.
We have two viewers.
it's showing now. Alrighty, yeah, I guess it's 10:24. This is just a workshop. On Highway 86 in the Elizabeth area. So, thanks for coming out. If folks are watching, appreciate you dialing in. It's a public workshop, even though we're holding it by video, very similar to our regular workshops. It's kind of an informational briefing to the commissioners, a chance for us to ask some questions, and through workshops, in general, there is no public comment, so that allows us to kind of run a workshop in this manner. So anyway, I'll turn it over to, I guess, you, Jim.
Yeah, I'll start. The purpose of the discussion today is to present to you findings and process for amending the access control plan through the town of Elizabeth on State Highway 86. This process started approximately 2 years ago with CDOT, the town of Elizabeth, and us. And the project that stimulated the discussion was when we annexed the E86 project into the town of Elizabeth. It was zoned for a 5-acre commercial site, and the balance of it is zoned for single-family residential units. As we started to go through the process, the town and the town's consulting traffic engineer, Stolfus and Associates, sat down with us and discussed the long-term plans for the connector roads south of State Highway 86 to basically create a bypass from Elizabeth Street all the way over to the western end of Legacy Circle, where it meets Pinto Trail out on the highway there. So we weren't totally enamored with some of the things they were talking about in the beginning, but the more we started to look at it, we started to realize this was probably the best thing for the town and for our community. At the time, we had a contract to purchase the property to the west of, or to the east of the E86 property, and we had already sold the lots for the Retoro project to Lennar Homes on the south side. So quite a bit of activity on the south side. The access control plan that's currently in force, or that's adopted by CDOT for that portion of the highway, was originally, the work started in 2005, 2006. I personally was involved in meetings with CDOT, with Tim Billebrand, who's our regional guy, and it involved our traffic engineer, the town's traffic engineer, and CDOT. And we basically sat down and started to look at the existing traffic signals. And the one signal that became questionable was there's a future signal signal condition out at Pinto Trail and Legacy Circle. That warrant is probably going to be met next year. The state of CDOT has already acknowledged that it will be met, and they've already given us the go-ahead. And Chris McGranahan's firm is actually working on all the background information and the design for that traffic signal, and we expect that signal will likely be constructed and installed sometime in 2021. So there will be a full-turn movement, likely within the next 12 to 18 months at the Pinto Legacy Circle intersection, which serves Wild Point, Retoro, will serve all of the commercial businesses along Legacy Circle. It also will serve that Legacy Charter School, and it'll make that left-hand turn a lot safer than it is today. It's becoming, at certain parts of the day, that left-hand turn is difficult. So what happened was as we went on, we looked at the town's plans for the development on the north side of State Highway 6, north of where E86 is, which is about 800 feet to the east of the Pinot Trail, or sorry, of the existing Cimarron Trail Legacy Village intersection, which currently is shown as a potential signalized intersection at some day. And Chris will get into the detail on this, but I just want to give you guys kind of the background. Long story short, CDOT eventually came back and said, look, it does make sense to move this signal from the Legacy Circle Cimarron intersection to the E86 and what will be a future collector road to the north that will service over towards Cimarron, and we expect connections over to Cimarron and also over to eventually County Road 13. So we started working on plans. Chris did a study. He did a progression analysis study. And again, he'll get into all the detail on this, but CDOT's consulting traffic engineer is Felsberg Holt Oleveg, which is a very well-respected firm in the city. They support the findings of Chris's firm, and the town obviously reviewed it, and their traffic engineer reviewed it. So the town, CDOT, Felsberg Holt, and Stolfus and Associates are all in support of this proposal to move that signal from Legacy Circle to Legacy Circle and Cimarron over to the 86 and the future projects to the north. So with that, this is Chris McGranahan here. He's with LSC Traffic Consulting Engineers. Chris has been he's been doing this for a long time, and we've personally been using LSC on a lot of our stuff for several years. So I'll just let Chris go.
We wrote down some of the high-level comments we got from the county's traffic consultant, Kimley Horn, and then a few comments from the county manager. And so, not to belabor the point, but I'll just quickly go through them. The first comment is just talking about the spacing of the intersections, how the existing signal at Elizabeth Street and Elizabeth, and the signal that Jim's talking about that's eminent at the west end of Legacy Circle, those are about 5,800 feet apart. And the halfway point between those two is that eastern Legacy Circle intersection with Cimarron. And so that was Kimley Horn's comment, is that, the existing access control plan looks like the spacing's a little better. Why would we want to jeopardize that? And so, as I get through all these comments, slide attempts to answer, but we're certainly willing to discuss after we're finished. So the second comment, says it was noted that the project to accommodate left turn lanes between Cimarron Trail, Legacy Circle intersection, westbound left, and Legacy Village intersection, eastbound left, side-by-side left turn lanes are presented, which requires further widening of 86. And what that means is that 875 feet of spacing, the left turn lanes on the highway are too close, the intersections are too close together to have the back turn lanes be back-to-back. And if this is a little bit graphic is going to show it in a little bit. So just keep in mind that was an issue, the back-to-back left turn lanes.
I just want to clarify one thing. You're going to see references to Legacy Village in here. That is the E86 project that was annexed into the town of Elizabeth about 1.5 years ago. So those two, whenever you see E86 or Legacy Village, they're synonymous. They're the same thing, and that is my project.
And then the third Kimley Horn comment was, why couldn't Legacy Village just go over to Legacy Circle fairly close to the highway so that they can have access to that signal as well? And we've got a graphic that shows the difficulties with that. And then for the county manager, the comments there, the first, an overall approach seems to be unfair to existing county businesses on the south side of 86 and residents on the north side of 86. Next one, a signal at both ends of Legacy Circle was always part of the county plan for this area. The third one is similar to the third one from Kimley Horn. We believe a compromise can be reached if it considers the following. The remaining signals at both ends of Legacy Circle are full access in all directions. And then there's a diagram I didn't attach, but basically they're saying make that connection from E86 Legacy Village over to Legacy Circle. And again, we're going to show why that's difficult. And then the last comment the county believes that Legacy Circle is not a county road, but is the responsibility of the commercial developer along Legacy Circle. This has not yet been acknowledged by the developer. To move forward with any plans regarding Legacy Circle, the situation must be expeditiously resolved. So those are the main comments. So the comments, if I was going to summarize them, I'd say, why do we need to change the existing access control plan? Are we going to be have negative impacts on the folks that would have used the signal that we're saying needs to be relocated? And why can't you connect Legacy Village directly into Legacy Circle, the loop road, and keep everything the way it is?
Just have you captured the bulk, the primary concerns that the county had?
Okay. And there, I'm sure there's others, but these are the high level ones that are, you know, and for what it's worth, the comments about the spacing and the back-to-back lefts were concerns our team had when we started the process. Because that's, and so Kimberly Horn probably had those reasons for this, had those concerns for the same reason we did. They just hadn't gotten as far into it as we have. So now let's get into this. This is a little tough to see on the screen, but it's basically the existing access control plan. There's 2 pages. I'll forward it just to show you that this is Elizabeth, and this is to the west, and this is CDOT's access control plan. So the aerial photo is pretty old. It doesn't even show the Legacy Circle being built yet. But what effectively hard copy, that those 2 intersections on each end of Legacy Circle are proposed as signals. And then to the east of the eastern intersection, there's a 9 and a 6. I mean, you may not be able to see that, but number 6 is in the south side of 86. That says it's a right in, right out. And on the north side, it says a 9, which says 3/4. So that means the existing access control plan assumes an access point that's roughly where the E86/Legacy Village intersection is, as a 3/4 on the north side and a right in, right out on the south side. So the right in, right out just means all you can do is turn right off the highway and right onto the highway, so it's fairly limited for anybody traveling westbound. The north side, the 3/4 means you can do the right in, right out movement westbound. You can also be going eastbound and turn left into that parcel, but then you can't turn left out of that parcel. So when we got into this situation, we knew that for this to be successful, we had to maximize that distance from Cimarron Trail to the intersection there that has the 9 and the 6. So what Jim has done is he's had his civil engineering team push that as far east as we could get it. And right now it's about 875 feet, and on this graphic it's under 800 feet if I'm not mistaken. So we've tried to slide it as far as we can to maximize that spacing. For what we're trying to amend. This is just a land use plan for the town of Elizabeth. It's relatively new. It's a 2019 comprehensive plan. It may be a little tough to see on the screen, but basically what it shows is mixed use and commercial zoning on both sides of the proposed intersection that we're trying to permit.
I don't know if you guys can see all this, but it's basically those 2 brown areas.
Yeah, so the Legacy, this little white area is the unincorporated area, so the loop is right in here. And then the drainage goes between Cimarron Trail and the Legacy Village intersection. So that 875 feet space goes through the middle of it. And then this is the proposed commercial on Jim's parcel on the south, and then on the north, the future parcel. All the existing grocery store and other things on Elizabeth Street in town. So this is just documenting that Elizabeth is planning to do what Jim's proposing. He didn't just come up with it on his own. This is the Elizabeth 2040 transfer. There's signals proposed on each end of Legacy Circle, and that they show it clearly says it requires an access control plan amendment. So they're acknowledging in their transportation plan that they prefer to have the signal here, whereas currently it's there. It doesn't really say in this access control plan amendment that this one would go away, but that's pretty much what we all assumed, is that this one has to go away for this one to be installed. And we felt at a high level that, you know, you can still tell it's spaced fairly well from Elizabeth Street. It's not right in the middle like this one is, but it's pretty close. And that, you know, our reason for moving forward is that we wanted one signal to serve the commercial on the loop, one commercial to serve this future commercial zoning, and then the existing signal for the existing town.
And just to clarify, that existing signal is the realigned County Road 13. So that's going to clean that intersection up, and they're constructing it right now.
Yeah, I'm just curious with you just assume that light goes away when the other to the east, there's two lights that are kind of indicated as either or on the plan.
Yeah, one
So,
of these, yeah.
so why the assumption it goes away?
Well, we knew that a spacing issue. You have 875 feet here, and on this plan, it's probably less than 875 feet because Jim had slid that a little bit further to the east. We had some early discussions with CDOT, and it was more or less implied that we couldn't have both. They're just too close
So
together.
it's a state highway, Chris,
Oh,
and they don't like any more signals than they absolutely
Oh,
have to
right.
have. I mean,
I totally get that.
I went through this with CDOT and Parker years ago, down at Hilltop and
Yeah.
Parker Road. I used to own all three of the four corners there. And it took us a couple of years to get them convinced to let us do what we did.
No, I totally get
And the
that.
other
I
thing
mean,
that's worth mentioning, and I'll get into it more on another slide, but that
couldn't be going to-
CDOT typically, I might say typically, I would really want to use requires, but typically, they want to see a traffic signal warrant met by existing traffic. The exception might be your Walmart is about to open. Let's say that would put it over the top. They want to have that signal open on opening day, so it's not a quagmire out there. But in this case, other than the Walmart, which tends not to be a peak hour event, and the school generates a lot of trips in the morning at rush hour, but in the evening, you know, the commuter peak of folks coming later than the school peak, so they tend to play a little bit better together. But this intersection is getting to the point where turning left out of here is very, like as Jim mentioned, it's challenging. There's speed involved in the highway. There's no traffic signal. So what we find is that all the left out all happens. A lot of it happens here. This intersection is where you get a lot of right turns out and left turns in from residents of Elizabeth coming out to shop, wherever they're shopping, Walmart, or maybe they're going to one of the restaurants or get fuel. So let's go to the next one. This is the supporting materials that we submitted to CDOT as part of the access control amendment request. We initially did basically a traffic study, which is I think may have been what you forwarded to Kimberly Horn to review. You'll notice that so we looked at this stretch of traffic signals. What this summary paragraph says is that the report was also reviewed and approved by Town of Elizabeth and Stolpus and Associates because the progression efficiency was shown to be about 40% in both the 2040 morning and afternoon peak hours, which significantly exceeds the minimum requirement of 35% required in the State Highway Access Code. Now, what's interesting here is that if you meet the access code spacing of a half mile, you're not required to do this analysis. But the access code says, and it says that the access spacing for future traffic signals is a half mile, or unless proven to be efficient of 35% efficiency or higher by a study. So we came in after the fact and did this progression analysis. First, we got the town and Stolpus approved it, and then it went on to CDOT, and they forwarded it on to their consultant FHU, and they came back and approved it as well. So that's the reason why we originally were concerned about the spacing, but once we completed this analysis, we said, well, we're well over the 35% minimum requirement, which means, you know, once all these signals get put in, a car that enters one end of the corridor or the other has about a 40% chance of going all the way through 3 or 4 signals without being stopped. So that's what that analysis does. So this analysis is required to even get CDOT to look at your request, and this is required because we don't meet half mile spacing. Now we're going to go into a little bit of the details. So this was our original study that we did in November. It's a little busy with all being on one page, but the section we're interested in is this is the Cimarron Trail intersection that on the north and the eastern edge of Legacy Circle on the south. This is the proposed intersection of Legacy Village. This is that, you know, this is number 2, this is number 3, and you can see it's hard to see, but it's like around 800-foot distance. So the comment that Kimberly Horn had, their second comment talked about side-by-side left turn lanes. This is exactly what they're talking about. We show a left turn lane here coming in to what we are calling a 3/4, and a left turn here to a signal to turn left in there. Those lanes could not be back to back because they overlap. So that makes for a this situation is gonna exist either way, it's just which one has the signal. So we feel like the side-by-side left comment is a valid comment, but it's gonna exist either way. Not really a differentiator between which location gets the signal. Oh, he acknowledged that. Yeah, it's worth noting that I had a high-level discussion with Curtis Rowe and Kimberly Horn, just letting him know we were gonna be doing this presentation today, and that he may get a follow-up from the county to look at it further, or to have some follow-up questions, and I just let him know that we had done the progression analysis. He was using it ends up either the existing plan or the proposed plan. This is gonna look similar to what we're showing on the screen here, with the side-by-side lefts. It's worth as you get closer into town. And so this won't be quite as dramatic if the speed limit gets lowered over time, which is plausible, but we can't do anything about that. That's a CDOT, and the town and county would have to agree that that's the right thing to do, and it's really out of Jim or my hands. But it's just have additional stacking distance and less deceleration like if we had a lower speed limit. Okay, this is a slide that attempts to address the comment of why we can't have an easy connection. So this is the existing legacy circle. This is the Walmart parking lot. This is the road that Jim built for Rotoro to get access. Rotoro's down below in this area. So this road connects right about in the middle of this loop. So this loop kind of comes over here. And the comment is, why can't we connect here fairly close and leave this as a right out so that folks could go over to a signal here? Well, what you see in this graphic is a large detention area there. This is the drainage that we were talking about that kind of comes. This is a drainage, and then this is the flood or the detention pond.
And that detention pond is built, and it does serve the businesses on the east end of Legacy Circle.
And this is the first access into the development, and we think that's the furthest north we could have an access to provide left turn stacking if you have a signal, and then you have to have some left turn stacking here. So this is about as close as we could get, and that's right through the middle of the detention area. It also would create what would probably be a high volume connection between homes, so you'd have commercial traffic traveling through homes to get back up to another commercial road. So it make this area of residential more undesirable. And so that's why Jim ended up having this connection. So if you live in this home, you know, you could come over this way to get to Walmart. What CDOT doesn't want is somebody in this home in the future to go out on the highway to get to Walmart or to come back. They want to have an off-highway connection. A slide that shows a much bigger area of where this roadway goes, because this connects over to Elizabeth Street. And so we're putting a really good collector system that parallels the highway, so we can try to keep as many trips off the highway as possible.
So just if we could go back a
Yeah,
second.
sure.
So the kind of darker in the upper,
This?
right, is that the commercial area you're talking
This
about?
is.
Or
That's all commercial,
Okay.
Chris, but we have another detention pond.
Okay, that was a
This-
pond, okay.
This site is really, really challenged
Yeah.
when it comes to drainage.
The other thing that I forgot to mention is that it may be tough to see this little box and this little box, but it basically says that from here to here, there's a 45-foot vertical difference. So this would be very steep.
That was one of the other issues. We were not going to be able to get catch the grade properly, and our slopes on the roads were going to be in excess of 5 degrees.
So, there's multiple complications here. The detention, the roadway would have to bisect residential, but have a lot of commercial trips. And, the 45-foot difference is a pretty darn steep grade. That grade is a lot flatter when you can stretch it out along this distance. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, this is a figure from our traffic study. It's just meant to show on the south side of 86 and all the proposed connectivity. So as Jim mentioned, a lot of Rotoro is built. This is that road that's been built for the Rotoro residents.
It's actually all built. Rotoro is 100% built out now.
This is the connection that we were just talking about, this roadway connection here. And
Beverly.
Beverly, which connects up to one of the signals. This shows the realigned road that CDOT's planning. But what we have here is a nice east-west connection. So if someone lives in the old part of town and wants to go to Walmart, they don't have to go on the highway like they do now. They can kind of come through here. It's probably a more sleepy, slower drive, probably conducive to walking or biking as well, whereas the highway is pretty much all vehicles at much higher speed. So what we needed to be able to show this to get the town support, and more importantly, CDOT support, because CDOT was not going to improve any changes to this corridor if there wasn't good off-highway connectivity.
Not only have we made the Beverly connection, but we've also taken 136, and we've actually built 136 up to the bend and in the southwestern corner of Abraham property. That's actually built now. Yeah. So the next phase, our next phase, is going to be to build 136 up past the roundabout all the way up to State Highway 86 to the north. Right. So the first phase of Legacy Village is going to be the eastern side of it, and then the second phase will be the western side, and that's when that final connection will be made, and the Beverly connection will be made when the Abraham property develops.
So in the short term, you'll have a connection all the way to here, and then eventually you'll get this connection.
One thing I'd like to point out is to the north of Legacy Village in Abraham, there's a lot of vacant property up there. The town does show that as commercial and residential development over time.
Has it been annexed in yet, though?
Some of it has. Some of it has. I've got an annexation map that I'll send to Sam, and he can forward it to you guys. But yeah, the annexation map, the piece that John Davis owns is annexed. The piece that Rick Toon had, that's Jace Glick bought, I believe is still in the county.
Okay.
But I'm not positive. I'll check that stuff, and I'll make sure you get that information. But the town obviously shows all that stuff in their comp plan, and you know, we don't know exactly when all that stuff's going to take place, when it might develop, but it will develop in a similar fashion to the way the south side has with connector and collector roads. And the town's desire, and it's in their transportation plan, I believe, shows some connectivity on the north side of Highway 86, just like we've done on the south side of Highway 86. So even people coming from Cimarron, and I know Pinot Trail is not paved and Cimarron is, they will be able to, there'll be some kind of a connectivity over to that State Highway 86 signal, so they have easy access to get to it. The other thing, and Chris, if you go back about 3 slides, there was another signal to the west. It's in the middle of what we call the E-West project, which has been annexed into the town. Yeah, that signal right there. That signal is a future signal also, and that is in the access control plan. We've annexed all that ground to the south. There's about 400 acres roughly. The stuff to the north, most of that is 5-acre lots, and it's stage run, and it's the Cimarron communities. One of the concerns that I heard was that people as far up as County Road 142, how are they going to get out? How are they going to make their left-hand turns? And you know, I did look at the maps, and I don't know if we have a visual aid here today to show it, but first of all, some of those people will go to County Road 13. That'll be the easiest access for them to get down to the shopping areas. Yeah. So County Road 142 does come across to serve that area, and 142. Some will come down to Cimarron, and eventually there is some kind of activity at some point, you know, from here down into here, so these people can get out on paved access. And I know this is the only paved road right now, and I don't expect it. I don't know if Pinot Trail will ever get paved. I was reminded the other day that, you know, Danny Wilcox, when he was a commissioner, got really involved with Sun Country, and those folks actually got together and decided they wanted to pave the roads, and they actually formed their own little metro district for the sole purpose of paving some roads. And maybe that's what Cimarron ends up doing someday. Who knows? So again, I'll shut up and let Chris go now.
All right, I'm going to go back to this slide for a minute because it's important to understand the thought process we went through on why we ended up with a signal here rather than here. So these folks, this is commercial, mixed use, this is commercial. this way to get to the light? Or do I want to go out of direction over to Pinto to get to the light? And so I think if this was the traffic signal, everyone would just come down to here and take the left, but so would some of these folks in this property, so it would significantly increase the traffic on this section of road. We feel like if this is the signal and this is the 3/4, you can do everything here you can do with the signal except make this left out. And so there's no incentive for anybody in this project to use this intersection because the left in, they can do the left in here. You know, coming from westbound, this right in right out is the same as it is here.
They just can't go straight across.
Yeah, they can't go straight across. So if this is 3/4 and someone wants to go to this way, light, they could come this way, take a right, and then take a left and come in that way, or they could come over here to this signal and then come out and make the left in. So they have lots of choices.
Well, but that stuff north of the town, they could go over to 13 and down too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just go quickly here.
So you just
Yeah,
build
if
a
you live up
frontage
here-
road there.
If you live up in this area, you're probably gonna go around.
Or if you live down south of that too, you'll probably go around. Or you'd probably get, whoever the commercial developer there is gonna interconnect with 13.
I would think so, over time, for sure. I just don't know, like Jim said, it depends how it builds out.
I mean, if I was developing that, absolutely, I would want that connection.
Yeah, the school's up here, it's a lot of volume, you know, it makes sense to have a connection over to here, just like we have a connection over to here and down here. So, Jim and I have talked about this extensively, and the thought process here is that if this access control plan gets amended, this probably stays full limit for quite some time. If it ever got limited to 3/4, we don't think it would happen until this was signalized and there was a connection. Both of those things. Otherwise, I think you would see this staying full movement and just not get a signal. Because, you know, we all know that most of the day it's not too hard to get in or out of either one of these. It's just that the commuter peaks are difficult. So we think it could end up that this ends up full movement, it just doesn't get signalized. You know, or it could be a 3/4, but we don't think anything will change until this alternative route is in place.
This is just a personal opinion, but I suspect it'll be 5 to 7 years before you see a lot of activity on the north side. So that signal, and we don't, the warrant, whether, and Chris, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Chris has told me he doesn't think the warrant will ever be met for the Cimarron Trail Legacy Circle intersection. He doesn't see that ever being met because you have the signal on the other end already. Yeah, this is Chris, not Chris Commissioner, Chris Traffic Engineer.
When you were looking at speaking of warrants, was accident history looked at? Because there's a heck of a lot more lights and sirens sitting at Legacy in 86, or Cimarron in 86, than there is at Pinto Trail in 86.
There's a lot of this is the heavy movement at this intersection.
Right.
Right out to the right, it's basically people coming to and from town.
Right. I'm just wondering, is there a warrant for a traffic death? Is
There are a lot of accidents, but to me,
before we get to 5 years, is somebody,
well, the
is somebody
traffic,
going to demand a signal?
well, the traffic signal
Yeah.
warrant,
At Cimarron?
there is a traffic signal warrant based on accidents,
Yeah.
but it requires 5 accidents in a 1-year period that would be mitigated by a traffic signal. So someone that hits an animal or someone that's drunk, those don't count. It has to be side swipe, T-bone, something that theoretically the signal would remedy. And so that we haven't found that there's lots of accidents, but we didn't see 5 in any one 12-month period that rose to that level. But let me expand on what Jim mentioned because it's very important also. So this intersection naturally is where most of the left turns want to occur for several reasons. One, the school's here. That's a huge generator in the morning and about 3 or 4 o'clock. All the Legacy Ridge low-density residential pops out here, so it's much quicker to get to this intersection than to drive over here to take the left. All of the Rotoro comes in roughly at the midpoint, so they're going to be drawn this way as well, because this would be out of the way travel. And so you basically have this part of the commercial is really the only people that are going to want to use this today. Once this signal goes in, now the drivers have a choice. Do I come over here and wait for what could be a while to make my left? Or do I come over to the signal and get in line? Even if it gets congested and I have to wait a little bit, I know I'm going to get out. Here I have to make a decision and take a gap that may or may not be safe. And so we feel that you're never going to get that 80, 90, 100 left turns an hour you need here to meet a warrant on the ground because everyone's soon as you put the signal in, it's gonna draw everybody that way. If it was the other way around and this was the signal, people were mostly going out of their way to get to the light to come back this way. So that's why we feel that this signal, once you put a signal in here, we don't know that we'll ever need a warrant here, and we know cities require that. You know, they'd be more likely to want to see something happen over more improvements here than to put a signal there if that's what was needed. But so we just feel like there's not going to be a whole lot of demand for a signal here. Here, we got commercial on both sides. And the alternative to not use this intersection is to go all the way around here, or all the way down to there, or all the way east, one way or the other. So we feel like this is a solid warrant in the future, where this isn't. So we felt like, why would we end up with one signal, a potential signal that's unlikely to be warranted, and then a couple limited access side roads, and then a signal down here. And so as we started pulling all this together, it started making a lot of sense. You know, we've got a signal for this commercial at this point. This commercial has a signal here, and then the existing signal for the town. And the fact that most of this commercial, once the signal goes to the west, they're gonna just come over this way. There's not gonna be enough of them that are willing to sit here and wait to drive a traffic signal warrant. Then you have the desire, you know, if this is a signal, you could be drawing people through the neighborhood. We typically don't mind residential people driving through the commercial to get in or out, but we don't want the opposite to happen. We don't want residential trips driving through or commercial trips driving through a residential neighborhood. So this was the much larger picture we looked at a minute ago, but it correctly shows that, you know, there's daylight out here. You know, it shows that you know, there's this option to go one way or the other here. You know, there's-
Cherokee Trail is also an option over there. For
yeah,
a
this
lot
kind of
people.
connects over to all the homes over here. But anybody coming down to this point, you'd have to think they're gonna go this way, at least most of them. So we'll go to the next slide. And this is a quick summary. I tried not to make it too wordy, but it looks wordy when you look at it here. But like I said, the proposed access control plan amendment request should be supported for the following reasons. The Highway 86 progression efficiency of the amended ACP is considerably better than required by CDOT. Second, the proposed access control plan amendment will be less impactful to existing residents north of 86 on either Pinto Trail or Cimarron Trail. And the reason we say that is we're not encouraging commercial trips in the future to come through these streets. We're basically isolating these residents on their streets and keeping the commercial traffic off of it. And the third point, the traffic signal warrant is unlikely to be met at 86 Legacy Circle, Cimarron Trail, which we just talked about. And this paragraph just summarizes what I said. It said these findings are supported by Stolpus and Associates representing the town of Elizabeth and Felsberg Hope and Olivec representing CDOT, so the proposed amendment request should be supported. Now, Jim and I are both willing to answer however many questions you have, but Jim, do you have any
I just have a couple of things I'll add. I have spoken to Carl Nyquist, who's the developer of Wild Point and the Wild Point commercial. He is working directly with Chris right now because I've made a contribution towards the Pinto Trail Legacy Circle signal, but Carl's the one that's actually responsible for coordinating it and building it. Chris is actually doing all the heavy lifting for him right now. And Carl, I've explained what the ACP is, the proposed ACP, and he does not have any problem with it. The ground that he has left to sell is on the west end. He does have he told me he's working on a contract right now with a bank, and that's the last little piece between Taco Bell, All About Fitness, and AutoZone and Murphy Oil. So the whole east end will be, if the bank deal goes through, will be built out. And then he does have a couple of people looking at the east end right now, and the fact that he's got a signal coming in that he knows it's coming in now, that's going to generate some more retail sales tax down on the east end of Legacy Circle, on the west end, right? And from my standpoint, a full turn movement, you know, we've got that 5 acres of commercial on the Legacy Village. The town has, in their comp plan, they have shown Abraham, on the north side of Abraham, it's 100% commercial. On the south side of Abraham, it's 100% mixed use, which allows some residential, but the residential has to be high density. So they're anticipating a lot of commercial uses on Abraham, as well as my 5 acres. I've been in the business a long, long time, and a full turn signalized intersection is a lot more attractive to a retailer. It's very difficult to get a retailer of any significance to come to, when I say significance, it has traffic impacts, significant traffic impacts, to come and locate on a limited turn movement with no signal. So there's a huge retail sales tax component to this, and as Chris pointed out a minute ago, you've got the Safeway pod, you've got the Legacy Circle pod, and then you've got our pod, north and south, which includes part of that Abraham property. So it does make sense to get one signal for each pod of commercial development, and so that all those commercial areas can thrive. If you have two signals, and again, we don't think the signal at Cimarron will ever get warranted anyway, but if you did have two signals there and there's no signal for the commercial on the Legacy Village connection / Abraham / whatever happens to the north someday, it penalizes those properties, we believe. So I just want to throw that out.
So do we have a copy of the Felsberg Holt? Rory, do you have we haven't seen that, so I think, that's important.
It was sent to you about a month ago or so.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Well, I sent it personally with the progression analysis and some exhibits, and I specifically asked that it got, first of all, who sent the ACP request out? Was that the town? Yeah, the town of Elizabeth sent you a package probably about 5 weeks ago. I followed up after a conversation with Sam Albrecht and sent the traffic study, the progression analysis, and also an exhibit that showed everything with an explanation, and I asked that it be shared with everyone. So, and I know things have been dysfunctional here the last few weeks, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but you do have the information, and if it can't be found, I'm happy to send it again. And just so you know, the way this works, once we got through this 1.5 years of process and all the studies, and we got CDOT to approve it, we got CDOT's traffic engineer to sign off, we got the town to sign off, we got the town's engineer to sign off, we needed to get all of those people in line before we could even send the package to you and ask you guys to look at it and say yes or no. CDOT has a process, as you can imagine. CDOT's good at process. There's basically a 30-day window, which expired on April the 11th, which happened to be a Saturday. I spoke to Tim Bellebrand at CDOT about 10 days ago, and I said, Tim, look, the county's not in a position to make a decision yet. They're still fact-finding. They're still trying to understand what's going on here, why we're proposing what we're proposing. And he said, it's not a big deal. He said, I can't extend your 30-day window to, because the town of Elizabeth has to say yes, CDOT has to say yes, and the county needs to say yes. Technically, if the town of Kiowa said yes, and you said no, we'd still be able to amend the access control plan. But I said, look, if the county's not on board, we need the county to be on board, because this is a big deal for the county, it's a big deal for Elizabeth, and it's a big deal for the landowners that control all that land around that area. So I wanted to make sure you guys understood what was going on. I really do appreciate you guys having this meeting today. I know this is awkward times right now, but this is important. This is everybody's concerned about retail sales tax revenues. It's the lifeblood of the county. It's the lifeblood of the town of Elizabeth, and we need to maximize the retail sales tax opportunities along Highway 86, especially inside the town limits. That town will grow. I doubt that the state demographer's forecasts for the next 20 years are all that accurate. It'll grow, I believe, considerably slower than the state demographer is expecting, but it is going to grow. Retoro's evidence of that. We've got almost 150 homeowners now in 18 months since that project opened up, which is really, really strong growth for the town of Elizabeth compared to what it had, which was nothing. So, but this slowdown obviously is going to slow the economy down. It's going to slow a lot of that growth down. So I just want to make sure that the 30-day window will start again. We're going to ask the town to resubmit the request to CDOT, so we'll start a new 30-day clock. But I don't want to start the clock until I know you guys have had a chance to review the materials, understand the materials, and we effectively answer any questions or concerns you have. And I think I hope what comes out of this today, we've spent a lot of time and energy on this. And initially, we weren't all that thrilled about the idea either until we really started digging into it. And when we worked out the 5-acre commercial piece with the town, then it started making a lot more sense to us. From a developer standpoint, this is a way more expensive thing for me. There's obviously improvements on Highway 86 that we're going to have to pay for. Right now, Carl Nyquist is on the hook for that Cimarron Trail trek signal. We're going to be on the hook for a good chunk of the new signal at Legacy Village, assuming we go that route, and Carl won't have that obligation anymore on Cimarron Trail.
Yeah, and I appreciate the history, because, I mean, from our point of view, it was a surprise. I mean, it'd be nice if, and I'm not asking or pointing fingers, because there's probably some discussions that may have happened in the background, but for us, it was a surprise. After a year's worth of work on the other side, we're being asked to vote on something we hadn't
I get it.
considered
I
was
totally
coming
understand.
before us.
I mean, we've just gone through a very unusual period in time, and the good news is we're having the discussion and we're getting it out. And the other thing, the existing ACP, Access Control Plan, goes back to 2005. I mean, the town has amended their comp plan twice since 2005. I mean, things do change over time, and things do need to be amended over time. And my experience with CDOT over the last 30 years, and I've worked with them on State Highway 83, State Highway 85, and a couple of other state highways, it's not easy to get them to change and modify things unless you've got really, really, really good, compelling logic to do it.
So you said something that's interesting. Different people can vote on this thing. Is it whoever has the most votes, or is it?
There's four jurisdictions that have a vote: CDOT, the town of Elizabeth, the town of Kiowa, and the county of Elbert.
So
that's
you
it.
just have to have a majority, or do you have
Three
to
out of
have
four.
consensus?
3 out of 4. And I haven't even approached Kiowa. I don't. I really think this is a county issue, not a Kiowa issue. And that's just Jim Marshall speaking. This has long-term financial benefits for, I believe, the county and the town.
The commercial part of it is that's where the old pioneer houses are?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That's just that little block?
Yeah. There's an old. There was like a little.
There's an old barn.
Yeah.
there,
Yeah. There's an old barn.
two-story
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
So that's all going to be demolished? I would
Yes.
guess, yeah. But looking at your map, other than the incline there to tie into Legacy Circle, the distance from the traffic light to your commercial is identical from either side.
It's just to have the access directly off Highway 86 to our commercial is a huge
But you'd
benefit.
have it either way.
No, not directly. No. You'd have to.
You'd
You'd have to drive down Legacy Circle and around.
One would be this, and the other one is through the residential and then up to the commercial.
Maybe I misunderstood what you were saying.
Visually, from 86, it's going to be no difference. Whether whether the Legacy Circle is your 3/4 turn, or I don't even know what the name of that street is, or the one you want to put the.
It's called. I think the name on it is Hind Street, Hind.
Okay, so Hind Street. So visually from 86, there is no difference.
You've lost me.
You can see you'll be able to see the commercial really well from 86, regardless of how the traffic control looks like. It'll be much harder to get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. If the signal is not relocated to Legacy Village, the visual. You're right. The visual elements of it will be the same. There won't be much different. But the actual physical access to the commercial on the Legacy Village and on the future development to the north will be compromised.
If you think about it, the more this, like the Murphy oil talk
got your yellow line there, you could go north to that, where that street is coming off, and you'd have to go through where the drainage pond is very narrow.
Well, then we have stacking issues
Yeah,
that,
this is the signal you're gonna get stacking, left turn stack.
A little stubborn, but I don't see the difference.
Well,
Well,
I
there's a-
guess depending on how much traffic and if you have stacking, it's,
But you'll have the stacking over on,
the other issue,
Hines too.
well, you will, but it's designed for it, it's a collector road,
Yeah, here,
and you're gonna be able to it's gonna be signalized.
yeah, this is our first intersection that's residential. There's obviously gonna be a commercial access here.
Yeah,
But, you know, if we came across the commercial, this isn't commercial, it's just this pot. So, to not bisect the residential, the connection would be right here. And you're
Yes, sir.
correct, it would be less
Yeah, and
impactful to the
and
drainage, but then your left turn, for instance, let's say you did that. Let's say that you drove out to here and you wanna take a left to go to Walmart. To be able to make that left turn, you have to be able to see to the west and to the north. And if I come out right here and I have to look and see who's coming from the highway, all I'm seeing is the back of a bunch of left turn vehicles queued. I can't see who's coming from the highway because the sight distance is bad.
I see what you're saying, Grant. I don't disagree with you, that it looks the same. I find, the light just went on. There's two problems. Number one is there's a fairly significant drop there, and to catch grade for that road in a way that was acceptable to the town's civil engineer was problematic. We had grades over 5%, if I remember, and that was not acceptable. The other thing is the alignment with the stuff to the north doesn't line up very well with the stuff on the north side, because now you're promoting all that traffic. When that northern property does get developed, whatever commercial happens up there to make that left-hand turn back into town, those people are going to have to go back down through Cimarron Trail to get out to that, and you're going to drive all that commercial traffic down in front of those handful of residential homeowners that have a relatively peaceful road right now. So you're, like Chris said earlier, you're creating a lot of redirectional traffic to go down through Cimarron Trail for all that commercial that might end up on the north side of Highway 86. The other thing to remember is it's not just Legacy Village and Rotoro. There is the future Abraham property, and a lot of that traffic's going to want to come out. It's going to want to go west as well, and to force them to go all the way through Legacy Village over to that Legacy Circle signal's not the best either. So, again, we've looked at all the options, and you know, we believe this is the most reasonable and probably the most it's the most viable, and I think it's the most from a retail sales tax standpoint, it's probably the best alignment for the town and for the county at the end of the day.
now, I think it's important we get that state or the highway department report so we can look at it, because I don't think anybody's really looked at that to even see what their comments
Yeah,
are.
no,
So,
that's
I mean,
fine.
we can sit here and speculate a lot on what our thoughts are, but we need to see what CDOT thinks too.
Yeah, well, and we've gone through that process, so,
Yeah.
I mean, the material's all out there, and you have a very well-qualified traffic consultant with Curtis Rowe at Kimley Horn, and Chris and Curtis are obviously very familiar with each other. They critique each other's work on a regular basis, so, and I think once Chris McGranahan had an opportunity to discuss with Curtis yesterday some of the he understood.
I'll say one more thing that we haven't talked about that I think is important. This intersection, once it gets realigned, this is the regional intersection. This is the, you know, doesn't really serve development. It's more regional public traffic. These are for private access, whether it be homes or commercial, and this will be for private access for probably mostly commercial signal over here, that's gonna push most of this Abraham traffic out to this intersection. And we felt that this is a nice, this may be halfway between here and here, but this is in a better location to bleed out all this traffic, so it doesn't overload this area or this area. So that's worth mentioning too, is that we wanna pull traffic away from the regional intersection.
One other thing that I guess I'd like to share is just, Retoro's obviously, it's known as Gold Creek Valley now, but there's 342 homes that are going to be built in there. Those lots are all developed now. There's 223 lots in the final plat for Legacy Village, which is not approved yet, but we expect to take that through the process here as conditions allow. And there, at some point, there'll be 100, at least 100 units in the Abraham property of residential units. So if you add that all up, it's about 665 units. Right now, you've got about roughly 100 units or so up in the Cimarron Stage Run 5-acre lot area. So there's going to be and eventually on the John Davis piece and maybe the Shepherd Sisters piece will develop at some point. They'll have a few hundred homes up in that area probably, because that will likely develop inside the town. And Davis piece is inside the town now. And I did look at the Davis piece. Lennar looked at it. We actually had land plans on it at one point, and there's probably 100 acres just on the John Davis piece, or 100 units. So there's going to be a fairly good concentration of residential units over time on that Legacy Village intersection, which is another reason I think that we need to have that signal there. And as you guys know, Wild Point's all large lots, and there are multiple access points. And the access control plan does have a signal at County Road 3, which is the western end of Wild Point. So basically Wild Point gets the Pinto Legacy Circle signal, and it gets the County Road 3 signal.
Yeah, I think, definitely getting CDOT's comments in the more recent study
Yep.
that you did.
Well, and I think too,
yeah.
maybe Curtis
Or-
can take a look at what's been done and give you guys maybe a little more detailed overview of what his thoughts are.
Okay.
And he did not have the progression analysis to look at, so he didn't have all the information either.
Yeah, like I said, just earlier, a year's worth of work, and then
No,
Yeah,
I know.
it just. Alrighty, so, do you have a set date to resubmit? Or, because, I mean, if
we're
a 30-day,
still-
if a 30-day clock
All
starts, it
we're
would be
try-
nice
all
to
we're-
have.
all we're
a-
trying to do is every schedule that we had 30 days ago has
No.
been blown up.
Yeah. Why is that?
So we're, we'd like to move this through this as efficiently as we can. We'll work with staff to get them everything we can. And whether we get CDOT's access control plan approval 30 days from now or 60 days from now or 75 days from now is probably not going to make a hill of beans of difference.
Yeah.
So I will not have a public hearing for a land use application until we can actually have a formal public hearing
Yeah.
where the public can actually show up. I will not have a public hearing over the internet or telephonically or anything.
You've been reading our emails. There's lots of people that
N-
are
I-
talking about these virtual meetings.
I've been doing it for 30 years, and I know better than to do that.
Alright. Alrighty.
But I really appreciate you guys
Yeah.
setting this up, and Sam for orchestrating it. I think this was a great idea, and it's always good to
Yeah.
get face to face. And
You got anything else you're working on a year from now that is gonna surprise us, or?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
Thank you.
Absolutely not. I have, my plate is full, and, you know, none of us knows
No,
exactly how things are gonna play out here over the next few months, but, I personally, we live in the United States of America, I think, and I believe we're probably gonna get back to some level of normalcy sooner than later.
Yeah, I think that's certainly every,
Record, Sam has downloaded this, so you have it.
okay, thank you.
Forward that to whoever needs to see it.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I think we're probably done then.
Yeah, I think so.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, I sent a text telling me. First, VOCC.
What you got there?